Well, of course, we know the gig economy is growing, but is the government doing enough to protect those workers and enforce the rules? Now, gig workers often don't get paid at the same level as full-time employees, and they don't often get benefits such as healthcare. Now, earlier this month, the Biden administration issued a rule compelling companies to treat some workers as employees rather than independent contractors, saying businesses must extend benefits and protections offered to employees to other workers that can fit certain criteria. For more on this, Terri Gerstein, NYU Wagner Labor Initiative Director, is here. So I want to talk about your op-ed here, because this idea of how people are being classified, for some people, they do want that flexibility of remaining a gig worker, but then you see these rules coming down the pipeline, really narrowing that definition. What are the biggest benefits for some of these gig workers from these rules?
So first of all, thank you for having me today. And just to be clear, our workplace laws cover employees and protect employees, not independent contractors. And the idea is that independent contractors are running their own totally independent businesses. And so that includes minimum wage laws, overtime, the right to be paid for all hours worked, also safety nets like unemployment insurance if you lose your job, or workers' comp if you get injured, the right to form a union or have a safe workplace. So all of these laws protect employees and not independent contractors. And that is why this new rule from the Biden administration is so important, because a lot of corporations have kind of taken advantage of using a model and calling people independent contractors, sort of engaging in the fiction that they're running a totally independent business, when in fact they are employees. They're working under a lot of control by the business. They're doing work that is, not really running their own business, but is actually, almost all the terms and conditions are dictated by that large corporation. And so that is what this Biden rule is hoping to cut down on and hoping to prevent, and to make sure that workers get all of those protections that the laws provide. And in relation to flexibility, often people, the gig companies sort of put it out there that what we offer is flexibility, and people want flexibility and they can't have that if they're employees. But that is actually not true. There's nothing in the law that prohibits employers from providing flexible work schedules to employees. And in fact, there are employers that do that.
Terri, to what extent can this be enforced? Or I guess the question is, how does enforcement look like in this particular case when you consider how wide and how big the gig economy is today?
Well, we certainly do need a lot more enforcement resources than we presently have. The U.S. Department of Labor Wage and Hour Division, which enforces the minimum wage law and overtime, as well as child labor and other laws, only has around 700 something investigators for the entire country, which is around 400 fewer than they had in the late 1970s. So we really need a lot more enforcement resources. State and local enforcement agencies are also similarly under-resourced. At the same time, they can still take action and make a big difference in this area. For example, as I wrote about in the op-ed, Denver Labor, which is a city and county labor enforcement office in Denver, Colorado, recently issued citations to 2 gig companies that were hiring workers. It was astonishing to me when I learned about it. They were hiring workers in restaurants, doing jobs like prep cook and busboys and dishwashers, hiring them as independent contractors instead of as employees. And again, if you go back to what these laws, what this means, it means those workers don't have the right to minimum wage. If they're servers, they don't have a legal right to get the tips people have left for them. They don't have a right to a safe workplace. These are very serious deprivations of people's rights. And the notion that a dishwasher in a restaurant is running their own small business is kind of, ludicrous on its face. And to me, and why I was inspired to write the op-ed in the New York Times, is that, this sort of shows the spread of this model to far beyond drivers or delivery workers or much higher paid knowledge and creative workers, to really areas where we've never seen it before: restaurants, warehouses. I found websites doing some Googling where there were healthcare apps that were hiring nurses, hospital janitors. There's an education app that bills itself as being like DoorDash, except you get to work with kids. And so you just see this spread throughout the economy. And it's really, really concerning when you think about the fact that it means that workers, by doing this, companies are trying to ensure they don't have to pay minimum wage or, comply with the laws that every other employer has to follow, including our tax laws as well.
So Terri, it sounds like this sort of using this sort of veil of flexibility to cover not having to really pay and protect some of these workers. I do want to ask you about some of the pushback that you've seen from some businesses, also from a Louisiana Republican lawmaker saying, look, millions of workers would lose earning opportunities. There'd be confusion on the rules, I guess, depending on which state or vicinity that you're in. And that means lots of lawsuits. And all of that ends up really costing these companies, and as they're painting it, costing the workers as well. What are your thoughts on those arguments? Do they hold water?
I don't think they hold water. We have some our labor and employment laws are really, a bare minimum floor protection for people. The notion that businesses need to be excused from the minimum wage law or from payroll taxes or from unemployment insurance as a condition of operating, that's just problematic to me. We passed these laws, legislatures have passed these laws. We as a society agree that workers do deserve some basic minimum level of protection. And frankly, a lot of, most companies and corporations throughout US history and presently in the economy manage to operate using employees and following those laws and paying their taxes. And it is not the only way or rule of nature that this is the only way for businesses to flourish and prosper and to be profitable.
Terri Gerstein, NYU Wagner Labor Initiative Director. I appreciate you joining us today. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.